Amid the vast and unforgiving plains of Colorado in the late 19th century, a small band of soldiers faced a test of unimaginable courage and endurance. Surrounded by hostile forces and outnumbered 10 to 1, these men stood as the last line of defense against a seemingly unstoppable foe. The silence of the open plains was broken by the sharp crack of rifles and the cries of warriors locked in a desperate struggle for survival. This was no ordinary battle. It was a testament to resilience, grit, and the human spirit's capacity to endure in the face of overwhelming odds. The Battle of Beecher Island, fought in September 1868, is one of the most extraordinary yet lesser-known chapters in American history. It was a clash between the U.S. Army's frontier scouts and the warriors of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Lakota tribes. This encounter wasn't just a battle over territory. It was a flashpoint in the struggle for control of the West, a moment that symbolized the larger conflict between expansionist policies and the Native American fight for sovereignty and survival. In the years leading up to this event, tensions between settlers, soldiers, and indigenous tribes had reached a boiling point. Broken treaties, unfulfilled promises, and an insatiable hunger for land created a volatile environment. The plains, once teeming with bison and vibrant native cultures, had become a battleground of competing interests. It was within this charged atmosphere that a group of 50 civilian scouts under the command of Major George Forsyth was sent to pursue a band of native warriors accused of attacking settlements. Little did they know, their mission would place them at the center of a confrontation that would test not only their survival instincts, but also their unity and resolve. What unfolded on that remote riverbank would etch their names into history and leave behind a story of heroism that resonates to this day. The late 1860s marked a turbulent chapter in American history. Following the end of the Civil War, the United States turned its attention to expanding westward, fulfilling what many saw as its manifest destiny. However, this ambition came at a high cost. The vast expanse of the Great Plains, home to numerous Native American tribes for centuries, became a contested ground. The Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Lakota tribes, among others, were thrust into a bitter struggle to protect their lands, cultures, and way of life against an ever-growing tide of settlers, soldiers, and railroads. This era saw increasing tensions fueled by broken promises and one-sided treaties. The 1851 Treaty of Fort Laramie had initially established boundaries for Native American territories, granting tribes the right to live and hunt freely on the plains. However, as gold was discovered and railroads pushed westward, settlers began encroaching on these lands, disregarding the agreements. The U.S. government, eager to assert control, responded with force. By the mid-1860s, open conflict was inevitable. Key figures emerged on both sides of the struggle. The Cheyenne warrior Roman Nose became a symbol of native resistance, renowned for his tactical brilliance and unwavering resolve. To his people, he represented their fight for survival in the face of relentless expansion. On the other side, Major George Forsyth, a veteran of the Civil War, was tasked with leading a detachment of 50 civilian scouts. These scouts, many of them skilled marksmen and experienced frontiersmen, were assembled to track down and confront native forces accused of attacking settlements. Forsyth's mission reflected the U.S. government's increasing reliance on civilian forces to police the plains as the regular army was spread thin. The simmering tensions erupted into violence with the Sand Creek Massacre in 1864, a brutal attack on a peaceful Cheyenne and Arapaho village by a Colorado militia. This event deepened the divide between native tribes and settlers, sparking cycles of retaliation that turned the plains into a theater of war. In 1867, The Treaty of Medicine Lodge sought to bring peace by relocating tribes to reservations. However, many Native leaders rejected the agreement, refusing to abandon their ancestral lands. By 1868, the situation had reached a critical point. The Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Lakota had united under leaders like Roman Nose, determined to defend their territory. The U.S. Army, meanwhile, ramped up its campaigns, sending Forsyth scouts into the field. This mission, while intended as a quick strike against hostile forces, would instead lead to an intense and unexpected standoff at Beecher Island. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test both sides' resolve, leaving a legacy of heroism and tragedy in its wake. The scouts and warriors were on a collision course, their fates intertwined in a battle that would echo across the pages of history. As summer waned in 1868, the conflict between native tribes and U.S. forces escalated to a fever pitch. Roman Nose and his warriors, having repelled numerous incursions, continued to defend their territory with relentless resolve. Their raids on settlements and wagon trains were acts of survival, striking fear into the hearts of settlers and prompting demands for retribution. In response, Major George Forsyth and his small band of scouts were sent to track and confront the raiding parties. Forsyth knew the risks. They were outnumbered and venturing into unfamiliar, hostile terrain. Yet he carried an unshakable confidence in his men's abilities and their mission. By early September, Forsyth and his detachment pushed deeper into the rugged plains, following signs of a large native presence. They relied on sharp instincts and their limited resources, knowing reinforcements were days away. Every decision carried weight. Choosing the wrong path or misjudging their enemy could mean certain death. As tensions mounted, their progress slowed. At night, around campfires, the scouts whispered about the possibility of ambush, their voices heavy with apprehension. On September 16, Forsyth's scouts camped along the Arickaree River, a tributary of the Republican River in present-day Colorado. The location, while defensible, was isolated, a fact not lost on Roman Nose, who observed their movements from afar. The native forces, numbering in the hundreds, saw an opportunity to strike a decisive blow against their adversaries. Roman Nose devised a plan to surround the scouts and overwhelm them at dawn. The pre-dawn hours of September 17 were eerily quiet. Forsyth's men, unaware of the encircling warriors, slept uneasily. Then, with the first light of day, chaos erupted. A thunderous war cry shattered the stillness as hundreds of mounted warriors descended upon the scouts' position. Forsyth's men scrambled to defend themselves, hastily fortifying their position on a sandbar in the middle of the river. The uneven terrain and shallow water provided minimal cover, forcing the scouts to rely on their sharpshooting skills to hold the line. Amid the onslaught, Forsyth demonstrated unyielding leadership. He moved among his men, issuing commands and encouraging them to hold their ground despite their precarious situation. The scouts, though outnumbered nearly 10 to 1, responded with determination. Each man knew the stakes. Survival hinged on their ability to repel wave after wave of attacks. Roman Nose led his warriors with equal intensity. Clad in his distinctive war bonnet, he charged the scouts' position, his presence a rallying force for his men. Yet, even with their overwhelming numbers, the warriors struggled to breach the scouts' defenses. The sandbar became a battleground of relentless gunfire, desperate charges, and mounting casualties on both sides. As the day wore on, exhaustion set in. Supplies of water and ammunition dwindled. Forsyth himself was gravely wounded, a bullet shattering his leg. Despite his injuries, he continued to direct the defense, refusing to abandon his men. Meanwhile, the scouts faced internal struggles, fear, fatigue, and the gnawing doubt that rescue might never come. Small decisions began to shape the battle's course. Forsyth ordered trenches to be dug into the sandbar, providing much-needed cover. Scouts like Jack Stillwell, barely a teenager, performed acts of extraordinary courage, venturing into hostile territory to secure water under the cover of darkness. Each decision, each act of bravery, became a lifeline, prolonging their resistance. As night fell, the sandbar was littered with the fallen. Roman Nose himself lay among them, struck down during one of the final charges. His death sent ripples of grief and determination through the native forces, while the scouts grappled with their own mounting losses. Both sides had reached a breaking point, yet the battle was far from over. The standoff at Beecher Island would continue, its outcome uncertain, shaped by the willpower and resilience of those who refused to yield. The second day dawned with an oppressive silence, broken only by the faint murmurs of the wounded and the steady hum of the Arickaree River. The scouts on the sandbar were a sight of desperation. Exhaustion etched deep lines into their faces, and their makeshift fortifications showed the scars of relentless attacks. Yet, there was no retreat, no surrender. For Major George A. Forsyth and his men, this sandbar was now their world, a fragile bulwark against overwhelming odds. Roman Nose's death the previous day had left a void among the native forces, but it also ignited their resolve. Leaders such as Bull Bear and Medicine Man rallied the warriors, channeling their grief into fury. They believed they could still overcome the scouts through sheer persistence. The warriors, numbering in the hundreds, prepared for another full-scale assault, their chants echoing across the plains. Forsyth, his leg bound with torn fabric and a makeshift splint, lay propped against a mound of sand. Despite his injuries, he surveyed the scene with grim determination. He could see the warriors massing again, their shadows rippling in the morning light. Turning to his men, he spoke with quiet resolve. "Hold fast, men. Whatever happens, we fight. We fight until there's no fight left in us." The scouts braced themselves, clutching their rifles, their eyes scanning the horizon. Among them was Jack Stillwell, the young scout who had emerged as a symbol of unyielding bravery. His hands trembled slightly, a mix of exhaustion and adrenaline, as he prepared for the inevitable. The attack began with a thunderous charge, warriors sweeping down in a wave of pounding hooves and piercing cries. The scouts unleashed a hail of gunfire, their shots sharp and precise, cutting through the charge like lightning splitting a stormy sky. Yet the warriors pressed on, their determination unshaken. The sandbar became a maelstrom of chaos and fury. Scouts fired rapidly, reloading with practiced urgency, their hands blistered and their ammunition dwindling. The warriors, some dismounted, advanced with bows and firearms, seeking any gap in the scouts' defenses. Smoke from gunfire hung heavy in the air, mingling with the metallic tang of blood. Forsyth barked orders, his voice hoarse but steady. "Aim true. Conserve your shots." His men responded with disciplined fire, their cohesion a testament to his leadership. Each scout seemed to fight not just for survival, but for the man beside him, their bond forged in the crucible of battle. In the midst of the chaos, Stillwell performed another act of extraordinary courage. With water running dangerously low, he volunteered to make a second perilous journey to a nearby stream under the cover of darkness. Crawling on his belly through enemy lines, he risked everything to secure the lifeblood his comrades so desperately needed. His return, though harrowing, buoyed the spirits of the beleaguered men. As the hours dragged on, the attacks became more sporadic. The native warriors, despite their numerical superiority, began to falter. Their leaders conferred, recognizing the toll the battle had taken on their ranks and the psychological impact of repeated failures to breach the scouts' defenses. The loss of Roman nose weighed heavily on them, and with each unsuccessful charge, their chances of victory slipped further away. By the third day, reinforcements for the scouts were finally on the horizon. The distant glint of sunlight on cavalry sabers signaled salvation, sending a wave of relief through the surviving men on the sandbar. For the native forces, it marked the end of the fight. They began to withdraw, their departure marked by a solemn acknowledgement of their losses and the resilience of their enemies. The battle was over, but its toll was immense. On the sandbar, the surviving scouts gathered their wounded, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and quiet triumph. Forsyth, his voice barely audible, offered a simple statement that encapsulated their ordeal. "We held." The standoff at Beecher Island had reached its conclusion. It was not a victory born of glory, but of grit and determination, a testament to the human spirit's capacity to endure against impossible odds. The sandbar, once a nameless stretch of river, became hallowed ground, a symbol of sacrifice and resilience in the annals of history. As the dust settled on the sandbar of Beecher Island, the true cost of the battle emerged. Of the 51 scouts who had stood against an overwhelming force, 6 were killed and 15 wounded, including Major Forsyth himself. The Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Sioux warriors suffered significant casualties, including the loss of their revered leader, Roman Nose. The withdrawal of native forces marked a tactical victory for the scouts, though it came at great personal and emotional cost. News of the battle traveled swiftly, heralding the scouts as heroes who had defied impossible odds. The public, enthralled by their bravery, celebrated them as symbols of resilience and the indomitable spirit of the American frontier. Major Forsyth, despite his injuries, emerged as a figure of unyielding leadership, earning accolades for his role in the survival of his men. Politically, the battle reinforced the U.S. government's commitment to westward expansion and control over the plains. It also intensified tensions with native tribes, further solidifying the push toward confinement on reservations. For the native forces, the battle represented both a devastating loss and a testament to their fierce resistance against encroachment. Their grief over Roman Nose's death was profound, as was the enduring pain of their struggle to preserve their way of life. In the long term, the Battle of Beecher Island became a microcosm of the broader conflicts of the American frontier, a clash of cultures, ideologies, and survival. It underscored the harsh realities of expansion and the human cost of ambition and resistance. Reflecting on the event, Forsyth later remarked, "We survived because we believed in each other." His words captured the essence of the scouts, endurance, and the bonds forged in the crucible of adversity. Beecher Island remains a testament to both courage and tragedy, a poignant reminder of the complexities of history and the enduring lessons of resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. The Battle of Beecher Island stands as a vivid chapter in the history of the American frontier, reflecting the valor of individuals and the complexities of a nation in transition. It encapsulates the relentless struggle between those striving to preserve their heritage and those pursuing new horizons. For the scouts, their defiance in the face of overwhelming odds became a symbol of grit and determination. For the native tribes, it was another painful episode in the long fight for sovereignty and survival. This conflict is more than a tale of military strategy or frontier resilience. It's a stark reminder of the human cost of progress and the enduring impact of decisions made during times of great upheaval. The death of Roman Nose, a leader of profound influence, symbolizes the loss of cultural anchors amid encroaching forces. Conversely, The survival of Forsyth and his men highlights the power of unity and resourcefulness when faced with seemingly insurmountable challenges. What does Beecher Island teach us today? Perhaps it's a call to reflect on the complexities of our shared history, the triumphs, tragedies, and lessons that shape our understanding of courage and conflict. If this story moved you, share your thoughts or explore more about the intricate dynamics of the American frontier. History holds countless stories waiting to be revisited, re examined, and remembered.